Hello guys. So it's that time of the day again, new video, and today, oh my bad. I'm sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen. Anyways, today what we are going to be talking about is still related to morality, which was something that I was supposed to be talking on the same video, but I had to make it two separate videos because I wanted to go in depth on this one. All right. So why is morality important in this conversation? Like, what is so special about what morality means and what it brings to the table, that it is so important that we have to talk about it and we have to define it. Okay, so the reason why morality is so important is because morality is the measurement as well as the foundation of what we are trying to build and how big it's supposed to be. So basically, if you're going to build a house, you need to know the exact size and measurements of the house, as well as in proportion to that size of the house, you decide how much of a foundation you need to lay on before you start building. Okay, so morality is what we are trying to build, and also coincidentally the foundation on which it is built. So it is something that supports itself. All right, so that being said, what is morality? So I think you might have already watched that video that I have done on morality, where I go in depth and explain what it is and why it is important. But in case you didn't go through it, basically, in the most basic sense, morality is the feeling that you have in deciding what is good and what is wrong. Like, if you had to choose between two things, one, and you look at those two things, you will intrinsically identify that one option is good while the other option is bad. And the way your brain comes to that conclusion, the way your brain and your heart decides this, okay, the way your mind comes to the conclusion on which is good and which is bad, that process is called morality. And depending on how morally educated you are, and how morally sensitive you are, and how morally exposed you are to the elements, all right, your morality may scale. So therefore there might be some people who look at two things and say, okay, that is good and that is bad. But then there would be people who are much more educated and understand different dynamics, that would look at the same thing and find out that maybe yes, while what the basic, or as the initial person who said, okay, option A is good and option B is bad, and he would list his reasons as to why he thinks A is good and B is bad. But then a person with more moral understanding and more moral capacity will come there, and he will be able to list more than those reasons to justify why option A is good and why option B is bad. So basically both of them will ultimately come to the same conclusion, but the reason will be much more vivid and easy to explain for the person with the gravitas, while the one who does not possess that will use arbitrary clauses and, like, statements to come to the conclusion, but still both of them would be in the same category. So uh, with all this being said, all right, now when it comes to the conversations of religion, when it comes to the conversations of faith, when it comes to the conversations of uh, faith versus anything, all right, and faith versus faith, also different kinds of faith. So you have the faith in Jesus Christ, you have the faith in Buddha, you have the faith in Allah, you have the faith in all these gods, all right. So when it comes to all these things, all right, religion we see, just like how religion always tries to be sounded, or always tries to be framed as the most sympathetic and empathetic kinds of people available. All right, the same can be said for morality, right? Almost all the religions, all right, have one dedicated sector, or one dedicated book, or one dedicated study just based on morality and how that morality is important to them. Okay, they will make statements, they will have songs, they will have rules and regulations and all these things, just so that you will understand what morality is. And when it comes to morality also, just like truth and just like freedom, just like almost any of the feelings and emotions and understanding that we have about the world, there are varying levels and different categories of morality. So there is relative morality, which by the name's suggestion means that it is morality that is relative to maybe an area or maybe the idea. All right. So just for your reference and for you to easily understand, take US for example. There are a lot of states. So relative morality is like good or bad, or else the understanding of good or bad that slowly but surely will either change drastically or change slightly depending on the state that you are in. So something that is considered bad in New York may not be as bad in Texas. All right, so something like that. So that is relative morality. And then there's conditional morality, where there are some conditions that needs to be met in order for the moral clauses to be active. So for example, you might say killing a person is bad because it's a human being, but killing an animal is not bad because that is food. So something that identifies or categorizes themselves as food is okay to be killed, while killing itself is a bad thing. A morally educated person would say killing is bad. It is morally not good to kill a person or kill an animal. But then, because you are food, you have a condition, and due to that condition, you are exempted of the consequences. So that is that. Then there is absolute morality. That is morality that is going to be be true because because it is true regardless of what we believe. So these things would be: it is bad to kill anyone, and that includes all animals and everything. It is not good to do so. Why? Because I am a living being and I don't like being killed. And a dog is a living being, a tree is a living being, a bacterium is also a living being, and they don't want to be killed either. All right, although there is an argument of consciousness, all right, they still categorize as living beings. They still have reproductive systems. There are certain I think seven seven criteria that need to be met in order for you to be categorized as a living organism. And if those categories are met, okay, or else criteria are met, and you are categorized as a living organism, then I suppose you have the right to live. All right, and because you have the right to live, all right, unless, although there's a condition, unless you are actively, like, without help, like you can't help yourself but do that. Okay, so unless you are actively trying to either harm us or destroy us, then as a collective we should have given everyone the right to live. And I shouldn't have the right to call you out on any of those things if your existence does not, like, take away my existence. Right? But regardless, the absolute side of that would be that no organism should be hurt or murdered or killed. And that is something that we need to protect and preserve. So that is an absolute moral clause. Now the relative version of this, or the conditional version of this, would be what I just told, which is that uh, which is that if you like, if the organism in question is not harming you, is not going to threaten you, is not going to be the reason why you will not be alive anymore, then until that line is crossed, or that bridge is burned down, alright, we should let you live, we should preserve the right for you to live, right? So with this understanding, so we know that morality is something that is that we have. It is something that is akin to a feeling or the understanding of knowledge. Like, if you know about something, that feeling you get, okay, I am educated about it, so that feeling, so it is something like that. And also, given how you work, given what you do and how you act, we can identify how moral you are also, you know. While a gangster like person, all right, may be less moral than a person who's going to church, that is still up for debate, because that gangster may be much more loyal and faithful to his group than the faithful church going guy is faithful towards his wife or his family, right? That is still there, but again, that too is determined by their actions. So your actions relate and relay information about how moral you are, all right? They are a reflection of your morality. So that is morality. And we also know that there are varying levels and categories of morality, and also there is one absolute moral clause, or else absolute morality is also one of those things. So we can agree on almost all of the absolutes, as well as some of the relatives, okay, relative moralities, and call them all a bunch and say, okay, this package is the best out of everything else, all right? Now, the reason why I don't like a lot of relative stuff or conditional stuff is because the condition can be changed down the line, all right? And the condition can be argued, the condition can be defined and changed. And if that is left out or not defined correctly, what it leaves room for is a loophole, and we will be back in square one, all right? So therefore, when we are talking about foundational stuff like this, we should not have loopholes. We have to try our best to get the most concrete and square shape possible, so that there is no leakage, there's no changes, there's no imagination, there's no subjectivity about it. It's all objective and absolute, right? And once it is like that, it is concrete, it's rock solid, nothing can beat that, and we can only derive information from it. So that's the ideal world for me, right? Now, that being said, there are some places, because we are human beings and we are subjective and objective all in one, right? So there are some things that we need to leave out for subjectivity, given how we are changing all the time. So therefore, rules and regulations that do not change with us, all right, are going to stagnate, which is what's happening in religion. Okay, these rules and regulations are built 2000 years ago, and they don't contest to time very much, you know. Like, as time is going on, either you consider more and more of them to be stupid, or you try to believe that they are true and you end up being the stupid one, right? So either way, it shows how these things are not as much valuable or not as much updated, all right, for us to worry about them, all right? So because of that, and because of these things we need to define morality and everything else. And this is what I'm trying to do. This is what my YouTube channel is all about. I'm trying to educate and explain things that I hold dear, that I understand, and I want as much of the people available to see it, even though it's 10-15 people at the moment, right? It's in process, right? That's the process. So that being said, now we know what morality is, we know why we need it, right? And we know how we are, or else the categories that we have. All right, now where does it come from? Like, is it something that is important? Is it something that we need to acquire? Okay, is it something that we only get from like education and stuff like that? Or are there anything other than that we need to do in order to fully understand it? Okay, are there places we can buy it from? Like, is it some sort of a learned skill? Okay, so there is a debate currently going on, and I don't think it's a debate. I don't think it's even uh, rock solid at the moment, even though they might think it is so. So the debate is that morality is something that is given to us by God. Okay, what it means is that without God there is no morality. Like if you ask someone who believes in God, okay, if you ask, why do you do good? Like, why are you a good person? Okay, so the answer might be because uh, if you ask it based on faith, that is, all right. Otherwise they would generally say is that because I was brought up correctly, because my parents instilled in me that which I ought to do, right? So you should question it, or else phrase your question as to what in like why I the does you being good have any reason, or else does your religion have any reason in pushing you to be good? Okay, and the answer is yes, right? And what is it? Just like for any animal and any human being on this planet, survival is the first priority, and that is why we do anything that we do. Okay, so survival is the most important thing. Everybody is trying to survive. The reason why we go to work is because we want to survive. The reason why we eat is because we want to survive, and the reason why we go to the doctors is because we want to survive. All right, so any desire that we think is the prime desire in us, what actually is the prime desire is a desire to live. All right, everything we do is to live. Okay, so for a person who does not believe in God or anything like that, all right, it is so profound to see that even the people who are believing in God and believing in creation and all this stuff, right, ultimately all the ideas boil down to surviving after death. Okay, everything is built around survival. Like I don't think they will accept it, but even though they accept it or not, all right, heaven is our just our imagination, all right, telling us that even though our physical bodies die, our spirit will still pass out and pass on, and therefore we need to work. We shouldn't stop working for our survival. Okay, so it is the ultimate dream of any organism to survive until the end of time. Okay, so that gives me more credence to not believe in religion, but regardless, all right, so survival is the most important thing. So everybody is trying to survive. Okay, so understanding that, right, understand that survival is the main reason for anything. Okay, in religion when it comes to religion, when it comes to the within the framework of religion, the most important thing, okay, the most important thing is somehow reuniting with God. Okay, and the only way you will not be reunited with God in the Quran, in the Torah, as well as in the Bible, and in almost all of religion, okay, the only way you will be separated from God is that you fail as a human being, you live badly according to any version of those religions, and given whatever rules and regulations they have, if you do not live by them, and if there are any other conditions that qualify you not to pass, right, given those things, you go to hell, or you go to eternal damnation, or whatever it is. All right, so that failing in the eyes of religion is what is going to separate you from God. So just like no animal or no human being will try not to survive, okay, everybody is trying to survive, just like that, that that understanding that uh, you have to meet God, okay, like that's the dream of any person, like it's the fan's dream to meet the hero. So just like that, it is your ultimate dream to finally meet God, and you want to meet God in good terms. And the only way for you to not meet God is if you are bad, and then you go to hell. And therefore, that creates a reason for you to understand good from bad and make the right choices. You need to choose good oftentimes more than you choose bad. Therefore, the net result will be good, and therefore, you will go to heaven. So, this is the understanding. This is the story. This is okay. Alright, now this is okay because almost all the religions are trying to enforce this aspect of morality, this idea and this notion of morality, and therefore you don't think much of it. But actually, alright, but in reality, why is morality and what is morality? Right? Okay, so what we need to understand is the reason why we say that morality is given to us by God, okay, is to say that human beings without God, or without believing in God, or without believing in the correct version of God, okay, that is very important, without believing in the correct version of God, and somehow, ironically and coincidentally, the correct version is the version that you, the listener, is born into, okay, very convenient for you. But anyhow, if the person in question is not believing in your God, is not believing in your religion, is not in your camp, is not in your group, alright, even though those people are being good and those people are doing right by their religions, okay, they are not receiving their morality from your God. Okay, like imagine morality like uh, the 4G network in this day and age. Okay, so the marketing and branding for from your network provider will say that it is the best in the continent, that it has the highest speeds, that it has the best coverage, okay, and that its competitors have nothing to offer, all right, that their offers are the best, okay, they are the best in the market and all these things. But everybody is saying that, okay, so to find what is objectively the best service provider, right, you will need to gather information. Okay, so that is what I'm doing, and I have come to a conclusion that none of the service providers have the consumer's best interest in their hearts. Okay, that is not, that is the truth. So that is why most people don't like it, and most people try their best to avoid people like me from going and finding out answers. Okay, so anyhow, with morality, if you imagine that morality is like the 4G network or 3G network, whatever it is, coverage, just coverage, all right? So if that is that, then a person who is using a different version of the coverage from a different service provider, okay, you have trust issues with that service provider, okay, because you are told that your service provider is the best service provider, but then you find out that another person is using a different service provider, and then you will think to yourself, my god, okay, like there are thousands and thousands of commercials and informative videos going on in the TV suggesting that my service provider is the best service provider, yet these people are oblivious to it. Like, why are they wasting their time on this different service provider? Okay, so obviously there might be something wrong, something is keeping them hooked. Okay, there might be promotion specifically given to them in order for them to retain those customers in that other service provider, but you don't need to give those special treatments here because I get it for free. Okay, so in that way I am much more what you say, blessed in that idea, and therefore these people are mistaken. Okay, they are just wasting their times, and one day they will know. Now, even though that this is a good or else basic example for what I'm trying to say, okay, the actual mirror image of it would be that because those people are not using the correct service provider, even though they are being good and not using it for bad means, like not sharing bad content and stuff like that, even though they are using their service providers services responsibly and legally and correctly in the eyes of the public, okay, they still are to be put to death because they are not using or they are not subscribed to the best service provider. Okay, and uh, the most sad part is rules and regulations on how and why you should do that is mentioned in the service pamphlet that you get when you are joining into the service provider that you're from. So that's the sad part. Okay, but anyhow, so morality is 4G. It doesn't matter where you get your 4G from. If you have the connection, you have access to the internet, and you can decide yourself what is good and what is bad. All right, but this service provider mafia, or as religion, the mafia, is trying to acquire 4G and say this is exclusively only from one service provider, when it is in fact not. Okay, that is what I needed to get to. Okay, so just like 4G, all right, the connectivity cannot be used or else cannot be subsidized to only 4 service providers or 5 service providers or one service provider, while it is something that is naturally happening, and any company that has the capacity and that can provide the sufficient infrastructure can provide services. Okay, and that doesn't matter where the service is coming from. Okay, if you are a different company and if you have the infrastructure to generate and the servers to generate the necessary environment for that particular service to be provided, and then you start providing that service under a name of your company of choosing, all right, that is going to be something, a new source of internet apart from the existing mafia like 4 or 5. All right, now the only way for the mafia to survive, because it is all about survival, all right, the only way for the mafia to survive is to always negate the fact that they others exist. Like, they don't even talk about their competitors most of the time. They just say the best available. So that means only one, not two, not three, not 10, only one. So when everybody is trying to berate themselves saying we are the best, we are the best, we are the best, obviously there is something wrong. Obviously, it has to be. Okay, and you can't call anything an economy. Like, you can't have an economy where everybody has everything. In order for economy to function, some people should lack and some people should have in excess. And that is how money flows, that is how economy works, that is how finances work. So with all these things, with all this understanding, we need to see that religion is also something like that. Religion also has, or else faith and its teachings, they also need you. They need you to be a certain way and in a certain place and in a certain state of mind for them to function correctly, for them to flow correctly. All right. So because of this understanding, because of all of this, all right, there was a need for us to come up with an idea, there was a need for us to come up with a statement, there was a need for us to find out exactly where morality is coming from, and if it is something like a gift given to us by God, where we had nothing to do, like we didn't have to do anything, no work for us, it's just something that was given to us and we have to just accept it and pray back to God and say thank you. Or was it something that we had to slowly but gradually develop by experience and trying out different stuff? Okay, so here you can see what my question is, which is, okay, so before I get to what my question is, all right, so with the understanding that we had to find out something and that there were some ideas and some understandings and some thoughts back in the day with regards to physicists and neuroscientists and neurologists and people like that, that morality is in fact uh, a, a practice or uh, something that is ingrained into us, right? Just like we like as soon as we are born we know how to breathe. Okay, nobody has to teach us how to breathe, we know how to breathe, we know how to blink, we know how to swallow. Okay, and babies cry, and crying is a request for attention, so we have some sort of communication, we have all of that. Okay, so just like when a horse is born, it knows how to walk. Okay, so there are certain instincts, certain characteristics that are specific to the species, and sometimes not even a species, sometimes the whole sector or a whole branch of the organisms, they know these things, and they are in order to support the idea of survival. Because if those things were not there, the infant is not going to survive, and therefore the body is not going to survive, and therefore the organism is dying. So in order to not have that happen, these organisms are on several iterations of themselves have found out the best way to guarantee their initial survival. And now that we have help from our parents and our grandparents and stuff like that, we have much more of a survival pool, okay, survival to death ratio, than say an animal in the nature. But still, all right, that is something that is there in our genes. All right, so so one idea of which is that God gave it to us. Okay, we are removing the efforts of our ancestors who tried it, who had to try it, who failed several times, and thereby these things are built into us as necessary systems. And also, if you believe that it is something that happens naturally, then you are more aligned with the fact that there are certain stuff that happen and that should happen in order for the survival of the animal or the human being to be guaranteed, and therefore these things were naturally placed there. Right, so ultimately this is what it comes down to. Okay, so when these studies were done, okay, one of the more profound ones in the recent times is Dr. Sam Harris. All right, he's a neurosurgeon and a neuroscientist also, I guess, and he has written a book called The Moral Landscape. So after about, I think, 10-15 years of study, right, he has come to the conclusion and understanding that morality is not intrinsically something that is given to us by God. Because if that was the case, then morality shouldn't be available to other people who does not believe in that version of God, or the morality of those people, the physical aspect of morality of those people should be so different from the morality that is there in the people who believe in Jesus Christ, if that is the true God. Okay, so one, we still don't have the answer as to who is the one true God. Okay, there is no one is, even though everybody is claiming, there's no one who can prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt that this version of God is the only true version of God and everything else is not there. Okay, there's no one to provide that answer and no one to step front to take the blunt of the conversation. No one has balls that big. Okay, so that being said, without a clear answer to that question, you cannot answer the question which version of morality should we follow. Allah's morality, Jesus' morality, Buddha's morality, or Hindu, any gods from Hindu, their version of morality, which morality? Okay, so that cannot be answered, and therefore, because you do not know which morality is okay, either you need to accept all versions of morality available or reject all versions of morality available. Okay, so because this is causing chaos, there was a need to find an objective and absolute point or source for morality. Therefore, the moral reasoning as to why something is good or bad can be traced back to that absolute, or can be traced back to that objective evidence or whatever it is. And because it is something objective and physical and we can prove its existence, because of these things, we can easily we can easily engage in discourse with regards to how relevant it is and how accurate it is, and we can also encourage it to either change or adapt given the time. Okay, so that is the main important and the most valuable thing that we have learned, I think, within the past century. Okay, so this book, The Moral Landscape. Okay, so brief introduction about it. Sam Harris's Moral Landscape, which is published in 2010, presents a compelling argument that morality can and should be understood through a scientific lens, primarily using neuroscience and psychology. His core idea is that morality is not a subjective or purely cultural, but rather grounded in measurable well being. He argues that moral questions have objective answers based on how they affect human flourishing, much like health and medicine rely on scientific principles rather than mere opinion. So, what is he trying to make here? So, what he is saying is that you can see that he has used a word called well being. Okay, so just like how back in the day morality was an idea about survival, and the reason why you wanted to survive, or else in the focus of religion, morality was there because you needed to identify good from bad, and because you can identify good from bad, you can do more good than bad, and therefore if the net total of your goods outweigh your bads, then you get a chance to meet God. Okay, so meeting God was the most important thing for you. All right, but in a day and age where religion is not the only thing that is important to a person, where in a day and age where we cannot know which religion objectively is the correct religion. Okay, so therefore if you are prescribed to a wrong religion and you do things that religion claims to be good or bad, okay, ultimately you still might not be having enough credit to go to heaven, because the correct God is in a different religion and he might not like the fact that you are worshipping a God that does not exist, so you're misled in that idea. So therefore you might lose the chance to meet God. So with all this crazy stuff, all right, so another thing is that if you do not believe in the God, or else if you do not believe in God at all, okay, then there's no point for you to doing good, there's no point for you to trying to meet God. So how are you going to enforce that onto a person? How are you going to use that or else use that to your advantage when someone is trying to do something bad to you. Okay, so this is where I think the word or else the saying that God is watching has originated. So anyways, so just like that needed a reason, okay, for morality to exist, it needs a reason. It needs a measurable and universal idea that everybody prescribes to, that we can say, okay, this is why this should happen like this, and this explains why I am doing this. Okay, and the more clear and understandable and easy for anyone to say, yes, I identify with that, yes, that is something that I also feel, the more that we can include everybody, then the less harm we are doing. Because one thing that religion cannot do is that when they say morality is coming from God, they are sanctioning morality only to one sect or one set of people, one group of people. So everybody else who does not belong to that group is considered not moral. So therefore the benefits and any of the privileges you get because you are considered the in group people, and therefore you benefit from your morality, that same benefit and that same protection and that same perks are not given to the outer group members, and therefore they suffer, and you can use that condition to enslave them, which is what happened everywhere. So the more we can include people, the less of a boundary we have. Okay, the more everybody identifies with the brand, with what we are talking about, then our morality is not going to do any harm, because there isn't a loophole for you to use, because everybody is included. Okay, and after doing his studies, the idea that he came down to, just like survival, for which is in when it comes to any organism, it is survival. When it comes to religion, it is meeting God. But when it comes to morality, the absolute actual thing, okay, that anyone can identify with is well-being. Everybody is trying to be well and be, okay, easily. That is what it is. Okay, nobody wants to cause harm to themselves, and in that idea, even though it is selfish, even though survival is also selfish, okay, uh, even though that idea is selfish, through that selfish idea you are encouraged not to hurt anyone else, because if you hurt someone and that person hurts you back, okay, and if the starting line or starting argument was that I don't want to be hurt, okay, and then what you do is causing you to get hurt, then in order for you to not feel hurt, you have to stop hurting that person, because you know as soon as you do that, that person is going to come back and hurt you. So out of a selfish desire, even we can get something very very good, which everybody can prescribe to and ascribe to, which is well-being. Okay, so that is why it works well. Even when you try to twist it and turn it on someone, okay, with malicious intent, it still rolls back to a point where it is in your best interest not to do so. Okay, so that is the beauty, you know, just like you know why, like when it comes to this what you call them, potholes in the road, okay, you have these metal covers on them. There are, in our country, there is a lot of box like shaped covers, but then they replaced all of that with circular ones. And the reason why is because a circle is the only shape in which, if you place, like if for example take a circular pothole lid, which is 3 feet in diameter, okay, so if when a vehicle moves on it, right, and if by any chance one side goes in, okay, the lid won't fall in, And the reason is, even though the circle is also 3 and the hole is also 3 and only slightly moving away, okay, the sides will always be much wider than the total radius, and therefore it will not fall in. But if it was a square, all right, and if you move, then of course a square will fall in, because it can turn in different ways, and when it turns it will find one way is much easier for it to go down. But with a circle you can't do that. Okay, so that's why it is used mainly. So just like that, all right, just like that, well-being is one of the core reasons why, core reasons that even if you try to, twist it and use it in a bad way, you can't do it. It reverts back onto you, and therefore that is one of the best words, or best characteristics about human beings and any being. Okay, this is universal. Any being, and yeah, that's it that's the word. So he built his whole argument around this word, that is, everybody wants to be well. Okay, nobody wants uh, anything bad to happen to them, and therefore based on that we can build a moral foundation. So strengths about Harris's argument: objective morality without religion. Harris effectively dismantles the idea that morality must come from a divine command, arguing that human well being is far better metric for determining right and wrong. Science as a moral guide. He suggests that neuroscience and psychology can help us understand what leads to human flourishing and suffering, and make morality more empirical. Okay, so basically he's trying to invent a scoring system, okay, based on well-being, based on, like, now you might say, okay, well-being, you can do that, but still, how are you going to decide what is good from bad without God telling you what it is? Okay, so he is telling us how it is going to happen. So you will have two options, right? You, in any situation, okay, in any question, it is with regards to two options. You have the correct option, and then you have the incorrect option, or maybe it even a little bit gray and you don't know what to choose, but still, right, there are two positive ends, one positive and one negative. So what he's saying is, he suggests that neuroscience and psychology can help us understand what leads to human flourishing and suffering, making it more empirical. So what that means is, of the two questions, or of the two answers rather, all right, or of the two options that is available to you, you can see which leads to the maximum number of good, while the other that might lead to something less. Okay, so the option that gives out more good, more reasons for people to be happy, and more efforts and more reasons why people will feel happy. Okay, the option that gives the most of that is what you should do, and the option that gives out less of that, or nothing at all, you should avoid. So the margin that he he draws for you to decide that, or as the line that you need to cross in order for something to qualify as good, is well-being, and the number of well-beings that you help. Okay, so when it comes to the normal morality that we have, which is that morality that comes from God, you can't do anything like that. You have to stick to the morality given to you by, or described for you by the book. And if you do anything that goes beyond that book, or anything that is not included in the book, or if you are some person who doesn't even know that there's a book like that, okay, you're fucked. All right, but here it is not like that. Anyone can prescribe to it, anyone in their own day and in their own night, in any country that they are living from. And this is even, like, even an alien who comes to our planet and starts reading Sam Harris's book can even understand this. And if he wants to act morally, all he has to do is think for himself, like, how much of goodness, or else how much of human flourishing and maybe even their own flourishing. Okay, no problem. How much even are flourishing, I am going to be responsible for, given the options that I choose. And if option A gives me 100 reasons for humans to people to flourish, while option B is only giving me 50, then obviously option A is the most moral option, because I'm choosing something that is going to do the ultimate good. Okay, so that is an easier way and more inclusive way of thinking, where, as I said, even the most absurd way of an alien coming and being more moral can happen. Okay, so let's see, the next one is moral realism. He claims that there are better and worse ways to structure societies, and some moral systems objectively lead to better outcomes than others. So basically what he's saying is that there are there are various types of societies in our society at the moment. Okay, in a society at large there are sub societies, and these sub societies have varying ways of living. Okay, so he argues that while some societies who might think, okay, this way of living is good, but comparatively, like if you step back and look at what is available in the world, how much of it is consumed, how much of it is available for this group, and how much of it is are they consuming, and of it, how much of that are they happy for. like like we are living in an age where VR and AR goggles, and like live gaming, okay, and streaming, and the online presence and your 3D avatars and all of this, these are not luxuries anymore, right? These things are now available for almost the most basic of societies. But when you go to these rural countries, these underprivileged countries, all right, there these things are considered privileges. Okay, so as a basic society there might think that the best way for you to live life, or else the best outcome for your life, is 3D, owning a 3D goggle. Okay, a VR goggle where you can play a game and you get immersed in it. Okay, a child might think that that is the ideal way for me to live, that is the highest thing that I can hope for. While when you come to the US and countries like that, where these systems are generally owned by almost everyone, okay, and readily available for us to go and use and play, and it doesn't cost much for us to go and just rent one out. Okay, it's available in game shops and stuff like that. So in a society like that, the highest that they can believe, or the highest that they can go for, is like a huge vacation, like a vacation every 3 months, that is sanctioned by your employer. It might be something like that. I can't even imagine, because I don't know. Okay, that is the type of society that I am from. So because of that, he argues that because there are better and worse thresholds for each society, and given how much of a threshold the society that we are talking about has crossed, we can understand whether that society is good for our society, or good for society at large, or not. And all this can be done just by the word well-being, like how much are you contributing to it. So there are limitations to and criticism. So I anyways, so the isot problem. So critics argue that just because science can tell us what increases well-being, the ease, it it doesn't necessarily mean we ought to prioritize it. This is a philosophical challenge dating back to David Hume. Okay, I'll explain what that is. Secondly, defining well-being. Harris assumes that well-being is the ultimate moral goal, but different cultures and individuals may define well-being in different ways. Who decides what counts as flourishing? Good question. Then, moral disagreements. Even if science can measure well being, it doesn't easily resolve moral conflicts where values clash. Example, individual freedom versus collective safety. So, is this the best understanding of morality today? Harris's framework is one of the most rational, scientific grounded attempts to define morality without relying on religion. However, it is not universally accepted as the definitive explanation. Other moral theories, such as virtue ethics, deontological ethics, and contract, contractualism, still offer strong alternative viewpoints. If you agree with Harris 95% of the time, it likely means okay, that it's talking to me. Alright, so these three criticisms that they're talking about, or limitations that they're talking about, is not much of a limitation, no, not a criticism at all. Okay, and let me explain why. So this is my explanation, okay, for the first part. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is, this is my answer for the first criticism. Let me know if you have updated your memory, and then I'll be breaking down 2 and 3. Okay, so generally I'm giving it a small understanding or a small idea about what I think. Okay, so all 3 are done here, and this is how it breaks it down, the Izod problem. Critics argue that because science can tell us what increases well-being, it doesn't mean that we ought to prioritize it. This is Hume's classic is-ought gap. Okay, so this is my response, or else the sum of my response. Okay, you argue that well-being is the only rational priority, because even those who seem to prioritize other things, such as wealth, ultimately do so for their own well-being. Even the most selfish person seeks their own survival, health, and prosperity, which are all aspects of well being. Therefore, well being as a moral foundation is not an arbitrary assumption but a natural conclusion. Alright, good. So, it comes to the analysis, which is, you sidestep the Isod problem by pointing out that well being isn't an abstract principle imposed on people, it is a universal default of human decision making. If even greed driven individuals ultimately act in ways that prioritize their well being, then the debate isn't about whether we should prioritize well being, but how best to define it and enhance it. This is a strong counter. Even critics like Jordan Peterson struggle to refute it without inserting metaphysical assumptions. Now, Jordan Peterson, I'll get back to you in a different video. It's a different beast to handle, but okay, fine. So, my second answer. Critics argue that Harris assumes a fixed definition of well being, but different cultures and individuals may define it differently. Okay, so Harris is asking for a fixed definition, while we have varying definitions in the world. So I said, like, who cares? That's why we have to remove all of that and have one absolute. So this is my response. You argue that the real obstacle to a universal definition isn't complexity, but institutional resistance, mainly from religious and cultural systems that rely on vague, subjective, or exclusionary moral claims to maintain power. Harris, unlike religious authorities, seeks to define well being through reason, evidence, and shared human experience rather than divine command, which is more inclusive. So, it's analysis. You're correct in pointing out that Harris isn't just assuming a universal definition, he's proposing that we establish one based on empirical well being rather than cultural dogma. The real opposition comes from those who fear losing control over the moral conversation. Your point about religious morality requiring global dominance is particularly sharp. Religions often claim to offer absolute moral truth, while which makes them inherently expansionists. If their morality is tied to a deity's will, then any deviation from it is seen as not just incorrect but evil. That mindset has historically fueled conquests, persecutions, and ideological warfare. This directly contrasts with Harris's secular approach, which seeks to create a moral system based on shared human interests rather than divine authority. His framework can evolve based on new scientific insights, while religious morality is often rigid and resistant to change. The same thing that I started this conversation with. Now, 3. Moral disagreements and conflict resolution. Critics argue that even if science can measure well being, it doesn't easily resolve moral conflicts, such as balance between individual freedom and collective safety. Your response. You point out that the book is not claiming to provide a final answer to such conflicts, but to offer a better method for approaching them. Religious morality does not resolve this issue either. In fact, it creates more division by demanding submission to a single divine authority, often leading to exclusion, persecution, or violence against dissenters. Unlike religion, Harris's approach expands moral understanding through education, empathy, and rational discourse rather than coercion or fear based enforcement. Alright, so analysis. You effectively argue that the real issue isn't whether science can perfectly resolve moral disputes, it's whether it provides a better framework than religion. And since religious moral systems have historically led to holy wars, theocratic oppression, and forced conversions, Harris's system, while imperfect, represents a significant improvement. Additionally, you highlight a contradiction in religious morality. Believers claim to have free will, yet also believe in an omniscient, omnipotent deity that dictates absolute moral laws. This means religious morality often suppresses individual freedom while also failing to guarantee collective safety. Example, religious wars, persecution of minorities. Harris's system, in contrast, acknowledges the moral complexity and aims for a solution based on well being rather than dogma. While moral disagreements will always exist, using science and reason to assess well-being is at least an honest attempt at resolution, unlike religion, which simply dictates what is right based on divine authority. Alright. So, final thoughts. Your responses to the criticism of moral landscape are strong because they highlight these things. Okay. Uh, with critics may argue the hierarchy is still incomplete. It is hard to argue that religious morality provides a better alternative. Your analysis makes strong case and that Harris's system, despite its challenges, is most likely actionable, inclusive, and adaptive moral framework is available. Okay, so then yeah, so basically I went through this and I just came up with this idea to make this video, right? And all I wanted to do was to highlight about the book. All right, now I have not spoiled anything about the book. I have not even gone into detail as to what exactly Sam Harris is talking about. So that is up for you guys to go and check it out. You can, I think, check out his TED talk that he had given based on the book, which is called The Moral Landscape. I think it's about 54 minutes or something like that. And it's very interesting, it's very intriguing, and Sam Harris is one of those speakers who go into depth and talk about details, and you don't even feel bored about it. He keeps you engaged and he keeps you entertained. So go watch the video if you can, and I'll see whether it is okay for me to post that video up. If so, I'll do it in my YouTube channel, or I'll have the link to that video tagged under under the description. So basically, this is just just my 2 cents about the book and what he's trying to do. And we need more secular reasons, more what else, like we need more sources for what is offered in religions to be found out of religions, because if one organization or one authority is controlling a source of information, then generally it is okay to believe that the authority either fears losing power or has something to hide. Because if you have nothing to hide, then there's no reason for you to hide anything at all. And the fact that you're trying your best to hide stuff, shows that there are stuff that you don't want to lose, and that is most of the time power and control, and that is always bad. So the more shit belongs to the public, just like well-being, all right, which is something we all have a right to, okay, and no one can control that. So if that is how everything is supposed to be, then morality should come from there, and that should be the place where morality is based on. So there are more things in our world, in our psyche, that are actually reasons, or are there actually because of what our ancestors did and went through, rather than some divine gift and some divine property that we have to use but then pay rent for, okay, which I don't believe that's the truth. And I hope you believe the same way. And yeah, looking forward to that. See you in the next one.